And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So in this week's episode, there's a lot of interesting that's been going on this past week or so. So let's get started. Let's see. So first we have, the big tech company Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, which is pretty significant acquisition. Obviously, Microsoft has been in a shopping spree of sorts this year and last year as well, acquiring previously Bethesda to prop up their Microsoft gaming division, and now acquiring Activision Blizzard is pretty significant. So we'll talk about that. What's the repercussion, especially for Sony, who's their main competitor in the gaming industry, and is there anything that can be done about it? Next, we'll be talking about companies with the popularity of blockchain technology. Walmart is investing in NFTs. So is that a good investment? I mean, a lot of companies have been looking into jumping on the bandwagon in terms of how popular the NFTs are nowadays. So we'll see if that's going to be profitable in the long run, or is it just a fad in the short run? Next, we'll be talking about one of the CEOs of the tech companies earning. We'll take a look at how much Apple CEO Tim Cook is earning. Obviously, the company is doing a tremendous job in terms of making its brand known, being popular, creating more products. Now, not everything in their product line is perfect, especially for the anti-repair issue, which is another discussion. But regardless of that, so we'll see how well compensated is Mr. Tim Cook here. Next, obviously, despite it's now 2022, the rise of cases with the Omicron cases has been increasing, especially in our country here. There are concerns in terms of leisure activities now. Cruise voyages have to cancel their planned voyages because of the rising cases. Now, there's a lot of concerns there. Obviously, getting groups of people confined in one small ship, and then if people were to get infected, it's just a recipe for disaster that you want to avoid. But obviously, this is going to have a significant impact on the business side for cruise liners in terms of not being able to operate and do their business. And lastly, into sports. For those who are not familiar, Novak Djokovic, tennis player, the #1 rank currently. There was an issue with regards to him trying to play at the first tennis major event at the Australian Open, and he was recently expelled because of COVID-19 regulations, meaning he wasn't vaccinated. And we'll delve deep if Novak had a case there. Was it unjustified when he was kicked out? And what does this mean long term for him as a player wise here? Anyway, so to begin with, the major news this past week or so, especially if you're in the gaming industry, how Microsoft has acquired or has planned to acquire Activision in the sum of almost 70 billion. So that's not chump change here. And the question here is, will this be beneficial for Microsoft here? Obviously, acquiring a lot of titles from the gaming publishers, especially with the likes of Bethesda and Activision Blizzard, is tremendous. Now, one thing many people would like to needs to remember regarding the issue that Activision Blizzard has been in hot water regarding how toxic their work-life culture, especially of how the CEO Bobby Kotick regarding dealt with the situation, letting it fester and promulgate this unwanted culture. So it's a big coup for Microsoft being able to acquire. So whether there's an arrangement there, has to deal with the ongoing court cases regarding Activision, and obviously it's a big plus also for the company. Activision is obviously having a lot of known IPs games. You have Call of Duty, just to name a few, and obviously Microsoft is betting on that investment so that people who are invested in other platforms, whether it's PC, Xbox, Sony, or even in Nintendo Switch, that they will be enamored enough. Actually, even I myself, as the time passes by, it's becoming more clear that Microsoft is doing a lot of good, especially for a consumer side, offering the Game Pass subscription, wherein, from day one, you can access all of their main libraries for Xbox here. Not the same for Sony here. And question is, what is Sony going to do about it? Are they still going to rely on their formula in terms of investing on large publishers and only offering 2 games in their PlayStation subscription? Is that going to convince people to stay in their platform? And obviously, as time passes by, if Microsoft is able to continue what they're doing right now, I think it's going to make a significant change in the landscape of the gaming industry here. Anyway, let's take a closer look in the article here. So, according to PCGamer.com, it will make Microsoft the world's 3rd largest gaming company in terms of revenue. I think, who's the other 3 players here? I think Tencent is another one here. Who's the other one? I forgot. Anyway, the valuation is, Activision is worth in the north of almost $670 billion here. And, obviously, Microsoft, the bigger company here, has the resources to be able to purchase it. And obviously, on their part, their goal is to acquire more companies to prop up their Xbox, their Microsoft gaming division, which is lagging behind for quite some time. And even if they're offering the console here, it's the subscription that's where they're making a killing. Especially as of right now, they have in the north of 20 million subscribers. So you can just imagine the money, the influx of money that they generate every month for every year that you're subscribed. And it's a win-win for both parties, for the company making tons of money, and for the gamers who's able to play to your heart's content. If you want to play 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's up to you here. In a statement, according to the Gaming and Software Development, today, Microsoft Corporation announced plans to acquire Activision Blizzard Inc., a leader in game development and interactive entertainment content publisher. Now, obviously, that's true in a sense, but they've been in hot water lately with, as I mentioned, with the how they treat their employees, especially the female gender. So the ongoing case, I don't know if it's a strategy for Activision, for the board of directors to be able to deal with the issue. I don't know if that's going to make it go away, or if Microsoft in the long run is going to fire the CEO of Activision, which is Bobby Kotick here. So obviously, it's an opportunity for Microsoft and opportunity for Activision Blizzards to change the narrative, so to speak, in terms of what's happening right now to what's being played in front of the public here. Anyway, Microsoft's gaming CEO, you have Phil Spencer, clarified that Bobby Kotick will continue in his position of the CEO of Activision Blizzard for the time being. So how long would that last? Is it just until they have officially acquired the company sometime later this year or next year? So obviously, people has to report now to the CEO of Microsoft Gaming rather than Activision's Blizzard here. So obviously, it's a big plus for the company here. And obviously, if you're Sony, you should be concerned here because their strategy was to acquire as many exclusive games that Sony can only offer. But as time passes by, especially with other AAA games not doing well in terms of providing top tier gaming experience, and now that Microsoft has acquired one of the biggest gaming publishers in the world, it's going to be problematic, and to the point that, in the recent article here at PlayStationLifestyle.net, Sony stocks takes a 20 billion hit after Microsoft announced Activision Blizzard. Now, obviously, that's a pretty significant impact on the company. Obviously, Sony, the gaming division, is only part of the conglomerate that is Sony, the company itself. But the question here is, what's Sony going to do? Will they let it just slide? And obviously, I've been very adamant regarding how Sony is offering, very unsatisfactory experience in terms of their library. Imagine from the PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to the current console, which is the PS5. I mean, they have a plethora of games that they should be able to offer to the mass public, and I think people, even I, is willing to pay I won't say substantial, but a reasonable fee, similar to how Xbox is offering 10-15 bucks for a monthly subscription, and you can download it and play to your heart's content here. And if Sony is not careful, obviously the position can shift, wherein Sony is maybe at the top right now, but that could change anytime soon here. And obviously, let's take a closer look at some of the biggest games that Activision Blizzard owns right now. So let's see here. So obviously they own Spyro, the game. They also own Overwatch, which I haven't played. I'm not into online multiplayer game. But anyway, it's a very popular game. Then obviously you have Call of Duty series. Now I've played the early parts, I think 2 or 3, I think. But it's still ongoing, right? And Microsoft is cashing in on that popularity so that they can sway users from other platforms to shift or jump ship. That I think that should be a really cause of concern for Sony's headquarters for taking it for granted, that thinking people would still be loyal. I mean, maybe the first time here, I'm really seriously considering, should I purchase the PlayStation 5, because from the first iteration of the PlayStation all the way to the PlayStation 4, I've owned their console here, but after that I might change that because of how compelling Microsoft is offering. Aside from the Call of Duty series, I didn't know that they also own the series of the Sekiro Shadow Die Twice, and then now they've acquired Crash, the franchise as well. Then you also have Diablo and Spyro, as mentioned. And then you also have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. So it's a very popular game. So it varies in different genres in terms of gaming experience here. And obviously, the more variety that Microsoft can acquire from their from purchasing in under Activision, it's going to be beneficial for Microsoft in the long run here. And I think it's high time for Sony to do something about it and not just be complacent or be overconfident that people will still purchase their console. And the fact that the consoles are still in limited availability, and the fact that if you have an older console, you can still play the other games. And I think that's the point that Sony is missing out here. Anyway, what else do they have here? So here they have a list of other games. You have Caesar, Candy Crush, Guns, Heroes of Storm, Hexen, Interstate, King's Quest, Lost Vikings, Phantasmagoria, Pitfall, Prototype. I played this one. You have obviously a popular StarCraft. I played that long time ago. You also have Tenchu and World of Warcraft here. So obviously, there's plenty of games that the Activision owns that can benefit tremendously here. And the question is, what will Sony do here? And I think at the end of the day, they have to be aggressive in terms of cultivating not just small gaming publishers to become to reach their maximum potential and be how is it Bungie? I forgot if it's Bungie that owns Horizon Zero Dawn's franchise. So obviously, to become a AAA publisher, you have to start somewhere. And I think if Sony can continue to push the many developers to prop up their games, and obviously in turn attract more users or gamers to your platform. Otherwise, it's not just Xbox who's making a lot of headway. Obviously, for those who are not familiar, Valve is also investing in the gaming industry, not just on the PC side, but also on the portability side. And obviously, that's going to eat up on a lot of gamers here. And if we are fortunate enough to have the availability of the Steam Deck here, I think I might forego buying that first before even purchasing a PS5 or even an Xbox Series X over over those consoles here. So we'll see what will happen with the battle between the gaming giants, Microsoft as well as Sony here. Anyway, let's continue. So next we have a retail company, Walmart, is investing or jumping on the bandwagon of the NFTs popularity, rise of popularity, obviously. So you have from audio, visual, pictures, and so forth. I don't know why people is so enthralled with it. Obviously, it's a virtual, what do you call this? A virtual item, so to speak, or virtual currency, so to speak. But anyway, according here at CNBC.co, what happened? There you go. I clicked the icon. So let's see. So according to CNBC.com, the Walmart is quietly preparing to enter the metaverse. So obviously, it's not just Walmart who's jumping on the bandwagon. A lot of companies, big companies, obviously, knowing how popular their products are, if people are willing to invest on it or buy their products, whether that's reasonable or sensible or not, that's another discussion here. But anyway, Walmart is appearing to venturing into the metaverse with plans to create its own cryptocurrency and collection of NFTs. Now, I think the logic here of the NFTs is similar to how painting works. You're trying to create unique paintings here of sort for people to appreciate. But obviously, in the gaming industry, there's been a big backlash in terms of it's just like microtransactions of trying to profit from every gamers who have supported your games. Now, if it provides a better value, I think obviously it makes a compelling case, similar to what we've discussed earlier with Xbox Game Pass. But if you're offering a service like how terrible the Nintendo Switch Online is, I mean, why would we pay $10-15 or even $50 or even $100 for the subscription for playing really old games, not even current games or recent games and so forth. But anyway, the big box retailer filed several new trademarks late last month that indicate its intent to make and sell virtual goods. Now, obviously, capitalizing on this is significant on their part, but I don't know how people are going to be receptive in their offerings here. And obviously, will it be expensive in terms of their offering? And it's not just that. In a separate filing, Walmart has said it would offer users virtual currency as well as non-fungible tokens or NFTs here. Now, I do not agree with what Walmart is doing and other companies, but capitalizing on it, since it's only virtual currency, so it's not tangible, it's not something you can hold, you can only watch it. So I don't know. Maybe it's just my take here. Anyway, so let's take a closer look. So you can see here, Walmart has already applied the patent with the trademark application or USPTO. Financial services, namely providing a digital currency and digital token of value for use by members on an online community via global computer network. And obviously, I mean, there's always business opportunities for many, and the question is, will there be a market for people buying it? Now, obviously, will it be a majority or a small segment? Because I don't see the value of owning an NFTs here, not just in the present but in the future. Actually, wrapping my mind on the concept of cryptocurrency as a new form of currency, it's still up in debate. But obviously, a lot of people has adopted that, and obviously, time will only tell if a lot of people buy their products, or in this case, NFTs. Then that would be considered the new norm, so to speak here. So only time can tell. And obviously, they've also made another separate application, 7 separate applications actually, sorry. So they also filed an online retail store services featuring virtual merchandise, Why would I buy virtual merchandise? I want an actual. And then electronics, appliance, indoor and outdoor furniture, home decor. So they're listing all of the product lines for people to buy. Now, whether that's, I don't know, that's kind of confusing, and I won't say it's deceiving on their part, but obviously if there's a market for those products to be offered and people are willing to buy it, and I'm all for it. And it mentions here that according to Frank Chaparro, director at crypto information services firm, The Block, he thinks it's a win-win for any company in retail, even if it just turns out to be a fad, which I think it's going to be a fad, because obviously if you're offering a plethora of products as NFTs, I think the notion of its value, of its uniqueness, I don't know if people would buy it. Think of it just like as paintings, right? There are a lot of paintings out there, but there's only a few Rembrandts, or what else? I forget the other painters, Michelangelo's and so forth, right? So obviously the limitation of paintings or NFTs would prop up their value. But if you flood it with plenty of products, then I don't see the value jumping up, or maybe the value will only be a small part of it. But who knows? Anyway, we'll get back to this and see if that pans out in the future. Next, we were talking about tech companies, right? And what's interesting here, the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, is paid handsomely as a CEO. Obviously, Apple, the company, is a billion-dollar company, and being able to perform despite the pandemic, regarding the maturation or saturation of their products, and now shifting to other businesses or other industries, in the case of trying to build their first ever Apple car. So what's the reward for their CEO? So let's take a closer look. So how much did Mr. Tim Cook earn last year? So let's take a closer look. What are their incentives and how did he earn his earnings from last year? So let's see here. Oops. There you go. So as per report by CNBC, the disclosure Cook total earnings of 2021 showed that the Apple boss increased his income by 32% compared to the previous year. Okay. So it mentions here the earnings of the Apple CEO is 50, almost 1,500 times the average compensation of the Apple CEO, which is around 68,000 now. Whether that's considered an overpay of sorts, obviously managing one of the biggest companies in the world, you expect to have a high compensation here and be rewarded. And actually, Tim Cook is not the highest paid CEOs in the world. That honor goes to Mr. Sundar Pichai of Google Inc. or Alphabet Inc. So, but that's another for discussion here. Anyway, going back here. So the Apple boss has a base salary of only 3 million. So I would say, is that considered high? That's only the beginning part of it. So obviously, he has a base salary and he's given extra compensation for achieving certain milestones, not just for himself, but for the company as a whole here. So let's take a closer look. So on top of his salary, Tim Cook got stock awards value of 82 million. And I think that's where the brunt of his earnings comes from. Now, obviously, the valuation of his stocks is only good until he withdraws it and turns it into cash. So obviously the 82 million based on the value of how Apple is valued nowadays. And you go on to mention that he received other compensation from the company that he leads. And so obviously there's other forms of 1.3 million. And then there's an included contribution for 401k of 17,000 and life insurance of around 3,000 bucks. And then you also have his personal air travel, which costs around $700,000. Another 600,000 for his security team, and then vaccination cash out of 23,000. So obviously, being the CEO, Apple CEO, is going to be costly, but spending $1 million, $2 million for his for him to be able to do his job effectively, I think it's a very small feat in terms of how much they generate here. Let's see here. Aside from that, the Apple executive got an additional 12 million bonus for hitting both environmental and I don't know about environmental and financial costs, maybe on their perspective. So if you were to add it all up, so you can see that he's able to earn as much as almost $100 million here, which is pretty significant. Obviously, for a hard day's work, you expect it to be compensated. I think that's the benefit of being one of the best and brightest CEOs in the world. And obviously, it's not perfect. Obviously, for a company's perspective, trying to generate more revenue, more profit is always the key here. But always take into account, obviously, you have shareholders in the company who's always looking for ways. How can you increase our value, the value of the company here? And obviously, the company can only do so much in terms of selling products, and obviously they've ventured into other aspects, into services, into their Apple platform. Then you also have their Apple streaming services, and then now trying to shift also into the car manufacturing, which is not an easy task. So we'll see how that develops in the future here. What's next? Okay, so next we'll talk about how companies are having difficulties adjusting with how the pandemic has crippled many businesses here, especially here in our country. The lockdown has caused a lot of business to shut down, and even if some of the business who are able to resume their business but can't operate at full capacity, and with the rises of now new cases, then it's another cycle of we're still in business, are we going to continue, and so forth and so forth. Now for the what do you call this? For the travel industry or for the entertainment, cruise liners have to cancel the voyages because of the rise of cases, and obviously being confined in a cruise liner is not a way to go. And if there's an emergency, you'll be stuck there, confined there for long durations of bit of time. And obviously, even if one point of one country is allowing people to travel, but from the different destinations that typically a cruise liner does, you will be limited as to where you can go and what you can do. And obviously that destroys the excitement of traveling around the world here. Anyway, so we have here, where was it? According to Reuters.com, it mentions here the Royal Caribbean and Norwegian cruise cancels voyages amid Omicron scare. And obviously, scare is one thing, but obviously for a business, you want to be cautious about it in terms of allowing passengers to board your ship, because if they were to be infected or get infected while in your care, then it's going to cost a lot of money for your business. So we can see here the Royal Caribbean and Norwegian cruise liner mentioned that cancel sailings amid rising fears of Omicron related infections that have dampened the nasty recovery of the pandemic. Obviously, no one wants to see that, not just for the cruise liners, but for any business that relies on people moving from one place to another, especially for the not just for the cruise liners, but the airline industries. And I'm sure many of the airlines haven't fully recovered yet, but that's another discussion because of their penchant for buying more and more airplanes and expecting that people would continue to travel. And with the pandemic that just happened, obviously that has derailed their plans here. But anyway, going back, so Royal Caribbean Cruises, as mentioned, has called off its Spectrum of the Seas cruise for January, which already had passed. And then January 2nd trip were identified as close contacts to a local Hong Kong COVID-19 case. So, it's kind of problematic because it only takes just one incident for it to spiral, and you don't want that to happen, regardless if it's on the in offices, in universities, in schools, or even in confined spaces, in airplanes, or even in cruise liners here. Anyway, a similar decision to cancel the trips by Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings was made against the backdrop of the United States reporting the highest daily tally of any country for new coronavirus infections. And you can see here, I think at the end of the day, before we can have some normalcy in terms of traveling again for many of us. Even I like traveling. Until we can get this infection down to a minimum, or we can have that herd mentality of majority of the population is vaccinated, and even if you're vaccinated, you can still get positive. But the point here is to mitigate the risk on the individual and hopefully for everyone else as well. And actually, it's not just those two companies. You also have or was it? You also have another company, the what's his name? Royal Caribbean, which is based in. Is Royal Caribbean? Let me see here. Norwegian. The one that's based in South Florida. Crap. Is it? It's Norwegian. Yeah, I think it's Caribbean Cruise. I think which was sponsored one time by, not sponsored, but promoted their cruise liners, Shaquille O'Neal. Anyway, so obviously, those Carnival Cruise. That's it. That's the company I was talking about. Anyway, so regardless of the cruise companies that is affected, they have to really seriously think, should they continue operating, and when's the earliest time they can do that. And until the rising cases has been dealt with appropriately, I think it's going to affect their business, not just in the short term, but in the long run as well. And obviously, relying on tourists, on vacationers all around the world to use their services, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So, it's a difficult battle, but they have to make do, either reduce costs, stop operations, or shift their businesses to other aspects as well. Anyway, for our last topic, going into sports now. At first, I didn't want to discuss it. It could be considered as somewhat controversial in terms of, obviously having your own personal opinion is your own, or in my own. But obviously, if it affects other people, especially in sports, right? Regardless if it's an individual sports or a team sports, it gets more complicated. And you cannot just say this is because what you believe in, and that's your own right. But if you're trying to push your opinion because you want to make money out of it in terms of be profitable, that I have a different opinion about. But again, this pertains to the issue with Novak Djokovic, one of the top tennis players, #1 ranked in the world right now, and he planned to participate in the first major tournament, which is the Australian Open, which he did get a visa, even though he tested positive. But once he got to the immigration in Australia, he was stopped dead on its tracks, and he did not meet the exception list because he chose not to get vaccinated, and then he tested positive while still interacting with other people in his dealings. But anyway, he did not fit the exception list in Australia in terms of does it have any adverse effects to the vaccine and so forth. And obviously all of these issues could have been addressed if he were to just get vaccinated, which is the main point of the matter here. And obviously, if you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your opinion. But if you're going to join a tournament, interact with a lot of people, even though it's a individual sport, obviously you have to deal with your people, and people has to deal with other people as well. You have the tournament officials, the people within the facility, and then you have guests, participants who's watching the game. So, obviously he's very adamant about it. But, obviously as a role model for a lot of people, a lot of individuals, I think this is a very risky toll here. And the fact that I think when he was he would consider held hostage because he was quarantined in a hotel, and telling people that he's being held hostage. Even his parents were very vocal about it. Well, you were given an option, to participate in the tournament if you were just to get vaccinated, but he chose not to, and yet he wanted to play the tournament. Obviously, he had the best chance of winning it all, and obviously earning a hefty sum, which is another issue. Now, if you were there to just to visit, I think that would be a totally different scenario here. But the point here is, if you're going to play a game, obviously it's not just Novak Djokovic, it's Djokovic, we will be discussing here in a bit. If it's all about money, then you should be considered, because people who are getting sick, even if they have been vaccinated, you want to be emphatic, or be emphatic with regards to their plight, because for him to speak up and be against about be anti-vaccination for whatever reason, and focusing on his wellness concept, which is kind of find it odd for one of the top players in the world who uses science to prop his ability to be able to be the best in the world in tennis, yet he doesn't believe in vaccination, in the science behind the vaccination, which is another issue. So it makes sense for Australia to boot him, to kick him out, because actually the point that they were considering, if he violated the terms in terms of getting inside the country, then he should have been booted long time ago, not go through this ordeal that they considering, not considering if he should stay. And obviously it's not just him who's culpable here. And what if he were to infect other people because of his presence? Would he be held liable, and so forth? Obviously there's no way to track the spread of the virus. And obviously he's not just there by himself, he has other people. He has his whole entourage, as you can see here in the photo, that can be dangerous for other people, especially they'll be only there for a few weeks, and then once they leave, they leave the remnants of what they've done, right? And obviously it's not just the other people, but also his family that can get positive and get severely affected with the virus, which we want to avoid. And obviously he's one of the privileged one, being able to compete and have all of this resources at his disposal, but that's not the same for other people. And it's not just in his case, right? If you look at into basketball, if you're familiar with Kyrie Irving, who plays for the Brooklyn Nets, which again, he's very firm in terms of his stance, which is fine. And the city of New York is very clear that a professional player cannot play if you're not vaccinated, which is another issue. In this case, even though it's a team sport, it's even more critical. If you're not going to support your teammates, then why are you there in the first place? And the fact that he's there to say that he's for winning, the fact that you're not playing 82 games in the year, you're only there as a part-time player, shows your actions, which is you don't believe in team, in championship, because obviously it's not just yourself that you're affecting, that you can affect other players, other members of the players, and the staff as well. And even the worst culprit here is Antonio Brown, who's a former player of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who play in the NFL, which he tried to hide or provide a fake vaccination card so that he won't be he required to a stringent protocol if you're not vaccinated versus if you're vaccinated, which is another issue here, because obviously people in public who are seen more often than not, obviously has to be held in a higher regard in terms of being more responsible here. If you believe that you don't want to be vaccinated, and it's fine, but the point here is, if you're going to tell other people that they should follow suit, then that's a very dangerous curve, because if that would affect not just them but other people, would others be held responsible? Which is, I think that's the slippery slope here. If people are anti-vax, which is fine. If you're pro-vax, it's also fine. But the point here, we're trying to mitigate the risk here. Is there a 100% way to be safe? Of course not. There's no guarantee in life. But the point here is, you want to ensure that you're doing your part. And that's the question here. Are you being responsible enough if you're taking care of not just yourself, but for your family and friends or loved ones within your peripheral here? And I think that's the main issue here. And I think those players I just mentioned, whether it's Novak, I think they were mentioned that Novak is still going to intend to play in other countries. And I think in Spain, there's been a very vocal part of the government who mentions that he should get vaccinated if he wants to play. Obviously, for a business perspective, having those players is tremendous because it creates a lot of marketing. People watch their games, but the point here is, at what risk? Would I risk getting infected if, I pay for the ticket and then I'll get infected at the same time? I think that's not a win-win scenario here. Anyway, I mean, at the end of the day, if you were not to play and then just travel around the world, I think that's a different discussion. But the fact that both of them, whether it's Kyrie or even Nova, is pursuing to play regardless of the consequences here, that's very, very irresponsible on their part. And both of them are very tremendous player. On the sport itself, I have no problem in terms of their skill. It's their decision in terms of what they're doing that does not just affect their lives but other people. And I'm sure as a Kyrie Irving teammate, if you're Kevin Durant, you're not too thrilled about this. Anyway, I'll keep you updated as to what will happen here in the future here. Anyway, I think that's about it. Hopefully everybody's staying safe. If you have any questions regarding today's topics, I leave the link in the description below so you can check the full article. And as always, stay safe, everyone. I'll see you again next week, same time, same channel. Take care and stay safe.